What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy right here, man. It's MMA Reloaded, and of course, we are bringing the fifth installment of MMA Reloaded Real Talk right to your devices, your laptops, your phones, your iPads, whatever you all are using. And if you're on MMA Reloaded, my face is on it. Welcome to MMA Reloaded Real Talk, folks. Today, I'm actually looking forward to it, man. First of all, it's our second show in just under a day, actually. It's not even been 24 hours since we were on last on the air. And I want to just thank Gifted Gabriel Green for his time, his respect. It's fighters like that, folks, that I'm pleased to be honoring, to be talking to. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know who Mr. Nice Guy, Kevin Wirth is, he is one of the most naturally charismatic individuals in the sport today. He knows just about everything you need to know. He knows how to keep himself in shape. His conditioning is fantastic. His technique is something that you would see out of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, or something that you'll see in UFC. Who he is, his personality, folks, is something special. As we just adjusted a little bit, so yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know what? We talk real here at MMA Reloaded Real Talk. This is where we talk real and we never lie, cheat, or steal. Today, we sit, folks, Kevin Wirth, Mr. Nice Guy, 18th ranked bantamweight in the United States today, in the US, and also the 6th ranked flyweight in the States. And folks, you know what? That is one of the most, it's an achievement to be proud of. Knowing the current state of MMA today, the current state of the game, and I want to thank him in advance. I know he hasn't joined us yet, but I want to thank him for joining us first, and because he's just come off a night of traveling. So, of course, I want to thank him for coming down and sitting with us and talking with us today. Folks, he is one of the most naturally charismatic fighters I've seen. I've seen fight. I mean, just look at his entrance. Just look at his entrance. Look at his finishes. You know what, folks? We are just about. It's fight week. UFC 249. I'm pumped. More pumped than usual, actually. I'm actually more pumped than usual. I'll tell you why, because this ain't no subterfuge here. We're about to play a deadly game at UFC 249 Jacksonville, Florida. Folks, it is one of the most stacked cards that you will ever see. And that's not it. May the 13th is even more stacked. We got May the 16th, which is looking to be huge. Anthony Smith and Glover Teixeira. You have Walt Harris and Alistair Overeem, Angela Hill, Claudia Gadelha, Ricky Simone and Ray Borg. I'm looking forward to that one. And folks, it all culminates, it all starts off. It's like you mash it together with this event Saturday night with Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje for the interim lightweight championship, the bantamweight championship between the legend, the King of Kings, in my opinion, still, even without the belt, even being out of action and losing the way he did to Cody Garbrandt, still the greatest bantamweight of all time in the Dominator Cruz. And he's coming in the challenger. He's coming in without the belt, and he's coming in against a guy who I don't like his attitude, but you have to respect him as a fighter. Henry Triple C Cejudo, Mr. Bend the Knee. Yeah, I'll call him Triple Douche. Folks, you know what? I don't like fighters like Henry Cejudo. You may have seen on our previous podcasts where we talk about shit talking and is it necessary? Yeah, it skyrockets a guy's career or it makes the money, but it is not necessary. What happened to this good old fashioned talent? What happened to settling it in a cage? Like Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard. Like we've seen with the old school fighters, Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell and T.O. Ortiz. Yeah, T.O. was chatting shit during that rivalry, but they settled it in the cage. You know, guys like Chuck Liddell, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva. You know, they have made their legacies from being so humble and using these as their words. Folks, like the expression says, actions speak louder than words. And I think that doesn't reign more truth than what we see in the game today. I think what you, folks, if you've seen, and I urge you to go and check out our video on YouTube about the impact of social media during this time at COVID-19, the lockdown and quarantine, the impact that social media has right now in MMA, in the MMA scene. You see these guys who, like Kamaru Usman, we've seen it with Usman and Masvidal. We've seen it with Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington, you know, and Leon Edwards. We've seen it with John Jones, John Blachowicz. We've seen it with Dominic Reyes. We have seen it with so many guys. Either there's rumors like Michael Chandler, one of the best lightweights in the world, not fighting in the UFC, but tearing up Bellator. And I think he's outrun Bellator now. Michael Chandler possibly coming over to the UFC with John Jones' DUI and the firearm and all that crap that went on. You know, you've seen the call outs, you've seen rumors, and folks, that's all because of social media. On Facebook, you know, if you're an educated fan, yeah, and you see all these discussion groups and stuff, and you're thinking like, holy shit, is that even real? Holy shit, is that real? Oh shit, is that real? Like, you start marking the fuck out, right? Because you're thinking to yourself, bro, I want to give my opinion, yeah, and I want to say to these guys, fam, this isn't true, or you don't know anything, or John Jones, or D. Reyes, or Overeem, or the Doom did this, you know, and shit like that. And folks, social media has also brought us the best, I think, the best build up to UFC 249. And I'll tell you why. We've seen the build up with Dominic Cruz and Henry Cejudo through their tweets, through their pictures, their posts, their videos. We've seen how D. Cruz is getting back into shape. We've seen what Henry Cejudo looks like. If you haven't, folks, go check our Instagram page out, MMA Reloaded, and you'll see his 12-week transformation, folks. Like him or not, he is devastating when he steps in the cage. And I think it will be a very, very tough time for D. Cruz early on. Although ring rust, if you're Dominic Cruz, you have one of the most brilliant mixed martial arts minds. You have one of the greatest fight IQs, one of the most exciting and electrifying fight styles. You have the reputation of being the best bantamweight in the world. Yeah, at one point or another. I'm not saying he is now, although it would be hard to argue against it. And so you have to think about what's going through D Cruz's mind, the pressure that goes through his mind. You have to think about Cejudo, even though he's talking all that shit. Yeah, what actually going through his brain? Does he think that? Does he think that he's gonna come there and steamroll D Cruz? Maybe in his dreams. But if you're Henry Cejudo, you're thinking differently. You're thinking like you're confident on the outside, but on the inside you have a real game plan that you're going to stick to. You have strategy, you have great coaching staff, and you have a style that is so evolved and so polished, so refined, and you're coming in there as the champion. So I would say it's going to be such a great night, capped off with two beautiful fights. I think what we're going to see with Francis Ngannou and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, I think what we're going to see with Calvin Guitar and Jeremy Stevens, I think how this event will just pan out. I think we'll be lucky to be MMA fans sitting there and watching it from your TV screens, from your laptop. If you're in the UK, BT Sport, UFC Fight Plus, wherever you're watching it. I think we'll be lucky, and we'll be lucky to be MMA fans during this time. Folks, we are 20 minutes away, give or take about 5 minutes, from Kevin Wirth, Mr. Nice Guy, who is ready to join us. Folks, it is going to be a crazy couple weeks for MMA Reloaded. On the 9th of May, folks, we have King of the Cage Bantamweight champion and undefeated star of stars. I think this kid has the potential to be a real superstar, a real household name in the sport, Johnny Munoz. And also, folks, on the 16th, we have one of the best young stars in the game today. And folks, I've been following his career for a while too, dating back from the Ultimate Fighter to tearing up one championship. Tan Lee, Bruce Lee in a dynamic package is the way you would describe that guy. And folks, I'm excited to see what Tan Lee will bring to the show as far as his knowledge. And folks, I haven't. I'm excited for that one myself. I've been a fan of his. I've been wanting to interview him for a while, since MMA Reloaded started. So I'm looking forward to that. That's for sure. You know what, folks? When we talk UFC 249, we talk this coronavirus. We talk coronavirus and lockdown and quarantine. And of course, my heart goes out to every victim and the families of those victims. And of course, folks, it is a very tough time. And in this time, I just want to give that little thanks to Dana White, to the UFC, for being so tough, so brave, and managing to outmaneuver that system and putting on fights for the fans, putting on fights to give your fighters work, to still pay your guys. Remember, folks, even though they're larger than life characters, this is still a job of jobs. This is still a job, man. Yeah, these guys do this to make a living. They do this for their families. They do this because this is how they survive. You can't have a fighter without fight. You can't have a fight without a fighter. Sorry. You can't have mixed martial arts without the electrifying atmosphere of the crowd. But you know what, folks? It just adds a little bit of extra spice. Empty arena, um, Jacksonville, Florida. You know what? And I think what we're gonna see throughout these three events in 3 weeks is something that I think we will never see again. And I think we've never seen is the hunger. I think hunger, passion. I think we're gonna see a new, reinvigorated UFC roster as they come into these events in the next few weeks. I think how it evolved over the past few months since the UFC have announced the return of their events and the UFC Fight Island, it's something to behold. And I think what we have is something so special. And I love this stuff. I love this sport. It's the reason why I do what I do, folks. It's because I love this sport. And I know a lot of people do. I know a lot of fans do. Folks, if you're a new fan, if you're an old fan, if you're just someone who just follows Conor McGregor on Instagram, which I'm sure most of you do, I think it's something to really hold in high regard, that you and really hold in that appreciation for Dana White and for the UFC for doing what they've done. It's going to be so huge. This event is going to be mad. You know what, folks, and if you just excuse us for 1 second while we send Kevin Wirth the invitation. We waste no time. Left and direct right here. MMA Reloaded. And again, we thank you for joining us. Oh, wow. Oh, man. Oh, snap. I'm looking forward to that one. Folks, we have just gotten word that May 23rd, I believe, yes, May 23rd, Dana White has confirmed that Tyron Woodley and Gilbert Burns will be fighting in the main event of UFC Fight Night, May 23rd, folks. Wow. May 23rd. Gilbert Burns. May 23rd. Gilbert Burns versus Tyron Woodley. Folks, holy shit. It is going down. I mean, we've seen so much out of these guys, Tyron and Gilbert Burns. Folks, it is nothing to be... there is no playing around here. There is no playing around. Tyron Woodley has been at the center, at the forefront of MMA on social media, because people want to know, Tyron, are you fighting? Tyron, are you not fighting? Tyron, shit, you just called out Colby Covington. You just called out Leon Edwards. What's going on? I think we know now what's going on. And I think Gilbert Burns versus Tyron Woodley is a great fight. I think how we see it is... folks, is just something that, you know what, you're thankful that that Tyron Woodley is back on your TV screens. I'm grateful that T Wood has come back and has accepted this fight with Gilbert Burns. What we see now, folks, in that fight is it adds more fuel to the fight. It gives fans more to look forward to as we await the arrival of Kevin Wirth. Folks, I'm pumped up for this one, man. You can see this. Look at my hand. Woo. Shit. And this one, folks, we are live right here on YouTube. We are going to post this up also, a little snippet of it on Instagram. So if you're not watching it now, I suggest you get off your asses and go on your phones and watch it. I will be also posting the full show on Facebook at MMA REL. Folks, it is MMA Reloaded episode 5. Real talk. Special guest, naturally charismatic MMA enigma, Mr. Nice Guy, Kevin Wirth. Top 20 in the United States at Bantamweight. Top 10 at flyweight in the States. Folks, I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm looking forward to having a chat. It should be one for the ages right here, folks. If you've seen MMA Reloaded Real Talk on social media before, on YouTube, you will know what it's all about. So, folks, I suggest we bring it to you the only way we know how. All right. So, as we just play the waiting game. Folks, I just want to also touch on that, man. Gilbert Burns, T. Wood. I mean, holy shit. I mean, out of all the rumors that we heard, and of course, with COVID-19, Leon Edwards can't really travel. And Colby Covington is, I would have thought Colby Covington would have still been a choice for Leon Edwards. I thought Tyron Woodley, sorry. I would have thought Colby Covington would have been a choice for Tyron Woodley still. It depends, folks, on how you perceive this situation. We've seen it on Instagram. We've seen it on Twitter, how they're beefing and I think continue to beef. I think they'll be beefing for a while. I think how we see it develop is something that, as a triangle of beef culminating and being settled in that ring. And Tyron Woodley is going to be fighting Gilbert Burns. What? He's not fighting Leon. He's not fighting Colby. He's fighting Gilbert Burns. You best believe that Colby Covington and Leon Edwards are going to be watching that fight. And they're going to be thinking to themselves, I hope Tyron gets knocked the fuck out. Well, I've got sad news, man. He might do. He might do. If you all haven't followed Gilbert Burns' career, I suggest you start doing that. This guy has been in the UFC for a while now. High flying. He's fast, powerful. He's a fucking savage. He moves forward. Great hands, great striking. His ground game is very underrated. His hands are so educated. Great combinations. He's knocking guys out. Literally has that show-stopping power. And folks, I am loving that fight. It's 2 days before my birthday. So thank you, Dana White, for that birthday present, my dude. May 23rd, folks, just confirmed Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Durinho Burns for UFC Fight Night, and that'll be in Jacksonville, Florida, too. Folks, it's so good for y'all to tune in here at MMA Reloaded Real Talk. It's just a nice introduction. Nice just to get you all relaxed and wait for our special guest. Today is Mr. Nice Guy Kevin Wirth, 8-1 in MMA, fighting out of Durango, Colorado. He is one of the most respectful guys. Follow him on Instagram, folks, at Mr. Nice Guy MMA. And he's not afraid of the DMs. And you can follow him if you want fitness tips, if you want to see his backyard workouts. Have a look, man. We should not be far off now, folks, from introducing Kevin Wirth to MMA Reloaded Raw Talk. Wow, man. I'm talking like a fanboy. I think, you know what, folks, it's going to be a great show today. Tune in after the live feed on YouTube. It will be uploaded. You can watch it with a nice cold beer in your recliner. You can watch it live with me right now. And folks, it is going to be something special here today. We're just going to go off and we'll be right back, folks. And hopefully we'll be right back here with Kevin Wirth. Stay tuned. Just folks, welcome back. And we are just about time, just counting down 5 minutes, 4 minutes now, till episode 5 of MMA Reloaded Real Talk starts off. And I'm looking forward to this one, folks. Kevin Wirth, Mr. Nice Guy, is our guest today. You know, folks, we've given you the rundown. UFC 249. And the surprising breaking news, May 23rd, when the UFC stays in Jacksonville, Florida, Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns will be a fight between two titans of the sport. And I am looking forward to that, man. I hope everyone's staying safe in quarantine and lockdown. You know what, folks? I think we're still uncertain. Although it seems to be easy enough, we're still uncertain about how it's playing out right now. Of course, people are still losing loved ones. There's still people losing their lives, but you know, my heart does go out to people, man. It's hard, folks, and I think it will be hard for a year, maybe 2 years to come. But folks, I will try, and I'm trying to keep y'all uplifted, positive, maintain that solidarity, and follow MMA Reloaded, folks, because I promise that even though we're going through this situation, I want fans to be entertained, even though I'm speaking. Yeah, folks, I hope I'm not putting y'all to sleep, but the podcast, MMA Reloaded Real Talk, is as legit as you would like any show to be. Filled with passion. You can see my passion, bro. You can see my face, it's fucking red. It might be because it's hot. But folks, we are just about live. Well, we are live, not just about. What the fuck? And Mr. Nice Guy, Kevin Wirth, is just about ready to join in the next minute. It looks like, folks. Stay tuned. Okay. So we are nearly ready right now for the for that special moment. As we await the arrival of Kevin Wirth. Here he is. Kev.
Hey,
Kev,
what's up, man?
How's it going,
oh, shit.
bro?
Oh, it's going good, man. How are you?
I'm very well. You know what? I was just giving the fans a little introduction about who Mr. Nice Guy really is. Bro, you're one of the most naturally charismatic fighters I think I've ever watched, and you know what,
right.
bro? I'm urging the fans to tune in and watch your highlight reel on YouTube. You know what I mean? It's something I think that will mark the fuck out of fans. You know what, man? I think, bro, I want to thank you first of all for joining us here at MMA Reloaded Real Talk. You know, and
this is my first interview, and I'm pumped. I'm a huge podcast fan.
And I want to thank you for choosing us too, man. You know what, bro? First of all, how's it going for you in lockdown and quarantine right now, bro?
Chill. I mean, I'm going a little bit broke. You know, nobody can make any money. But besides that, it's good, man. Like, it's nice to have a lot of downtime and time to relax and focus. Like, I'm still able to train. I'm still able to do strength conditioning and run, mobility, meditation, shadow boxing, all that stuff. Obviously, right now, I don't have partners to work with. So that's a little bit of a bummer, like, you know, missing that live feel and everything. Like, there's nothing that sharpens you up like that. But besides that, man, it's all good. I've been trying to enjoy the forced stuff.
Oh, definitely, bro. I mean, it's hard. Yeah, it gets a bit too much after a while. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, if fans want to follow you on Instagram, bro, at Mr. Nice Guy MMA, they can see what you do, bro. I mean, your backyard workouts. You're obviously in top physical shape, bro. What's your training routine now in lockdown?
Yeah, okay, cool. Like I'm having to mix it up a lot. Like I said, like there's no partner work and stuff like that, so I'm having to focus on other things. So I've been picking up a lot of like gymnastics and tumbling and just trying to like find different movements and different influences from other places to help me further my game. Like I think there's only so much information in the martial arts world, and obviously that's where we want to like stay the most and focus and train and everything like that. But we can learn a lot from dabbling a little bit in gymnastics or even ballet, like the way that those guys can hold up their legs and stuff like that. Like I don't see any other martial artists doing stuff like that. So kind of like looking around at how other athletes are moving and training and kind of like trying to follow suit and seeing what I get out of it. That's kind of what I've been playing with ever since this lockdown stuff. But it's been fun, man. Like I can like skill level development in like my mobility, and I can do, you know, it's like I've been working on like my back handsprings and shit, and so I'm definitely still getting more like explosive and mobile and stuff like that. All the physical stuff that will help me out when I come back and can do sparring lessons and stuff like that.
I mean, that sort of helps a fighter like you, bro, because your fighting style is a lot of technical striking, the point fight style that we see in a lot of pure martial arts we see in your fights, bro. And like you said, I mean, gymnastics helps a hell of a lot because you're becoming a lot more flexible, you know, and it shows exactly what you're made of. You know what I mean? I mean, you help with your dexterity, and that will help with your kicks and how you are actually in the fight.
Exactly. Yeah, like if you look at the best movers in the world, and they're probably gymnasts. There can be made like arguments made for a couple of things, but like really, like, man, if you want to be able to move like crazy, do gymnastics. And at the base of martial arts is good physical movement. So I think it's a good world to dabble into. And then if you watch like Ido Portal and the work that he did with Conor McGregor and stuff like that is all movement based and gymnastics based and stuff like that. You saw how it helped him out.
Definitely. I mean, bro, it's a huge part to keep yourself in shape, healthy during this time. And I know you're finding those ways to do so, man. So I praise that. And I admire that.
Definitely haven't been perfect about it, man. I'm on like the, drinking too much beer and hanging out with like the kids I live with and everything. I'm definitely taking it easy too.
So as we get down to business, Kev, where you competed at flyweight and you've competed at bantamweight too, bro. Of course, at bantamweight, you are 8-1 right now as a professional. You're 1-1 as an amateur, bro. And I just wanted to just touch on that because the bantamweight and flyweight divisions are relatively new for new fans who haven't really checked it out. But you can see that regional circuits in the United States and the UFC and Bellator, PFL and promotions like that are bringing in the top-ranked bantamweights and flyweights in the country. How would you compare to fighting at bantamweight and fighting at flyweight? Are there any differences? Is it the same?
It's not the same. The guys at 35 are definitely bigger and thicker. I tend to be the smaller guy. It's not always the case, but I tend to be the smaller guy at 35. And then I tend to be a slightly bigger at 25. But man, like the cut down to 25 is so brutal. I walk around at 45 and I have nothing on me already. So that 20-pound weight cut is gnarly. I'm not a huge fan of it. So I think like I like competing at 35. That way in my training and stuff, I can do a little bit more explosive training, a little bit more lifting. I don't always have to be concentrating on being as like skinny as I can. And I've done well at 35. I think it might be, I've done well so far. So I'm going to stick there until either the guys get too big for me or whatever. We'll see what happens. I can make 25 if I have to, but I don't like it.
You're walking around. If you walk around at 145, how do you find the weight cuts if you have to cut down to 25?
So there's a process that you go through. It's really like it starts at the beginning of your camp and you're dieting down and everything like that. But really, I only diet down to maybe 143, and then the rest is an actual weight cut. But there's ways that you can do it that are really like little steps that you can do, like salt loading and then salt cutting, where you have too much salt and then you cut it out of your system. And then same thing with water, you water load and then you water cut and put your body into flushing mode. You cut out foods that hold on to water, like carbohydrates and stuff like that. And then you just sit in the sauna, and it's crazy how much comes off of you, man. But it's rough.
You know what? With weight cuts, Kev, it's been so prominent because we've seen tragedies from weight cuts as well, with young fighters, of course, passing away from cutting weight, and just watching it. Fans are OG fans of MMA. They'll see how fighters used to do it on the Ultimate Fighter, and that's a perfect example, bro. I mean, how, in your opinion, bro, as a young veteran of the sport, how do you feel? I mean, what do you think caused these fighters to pass away from weight cuts? And what do you think can cause something like that?
Well, when like you said, like a lot of the times, generally when this kind of stuff happens, it's amateurs on the up and come, right? So like the guys that have already made it are doing these big 30 weight pound cuts, but they have doctors and nutritionists and everything like that they work on, or that they work with. And then these up and comers are seeing that these kind of weight cuts, but they don't see the science that goes into it. They just go, oh, they're cutting 20 pounds, I have to cut 20 pounds. But they're not following the same steps. They don't have doctors and nutritionists watching them. So obviously with that kind of stuff, there's a lot more room for mess ups and tragedy.
I mean, of course, it's hard to see, and it's hard to even hear about when something like that happens. So we move on now, but and of course, when it comes to the regional scene of MMA, and you've done Cage Fury, you've been at Legacy, even Combate. But how does that work? Because do you just get calls? Is there a contract drawn up? How do you go about to compete at those shows?
Yeah, there's contracts drawn up, but generally like local shows will come into town and they're always hitting up local gyms for fighters. So my coaches have all these guys' numbers. Then I also work with first round management and they find me fights and sponsorships and stuff like that when I go out and fight. So I have people doing this kind of stuff for me, which is nice, because the more that I can concentrate on just the martial arts stuff and leave all the other stuff to my team, the better.
I mean, but how at Legacy and King of the Cage and Cage Fury, bro, they're promotions generally known for producing the best of the next generation. Yeah, I mean, how do you feel? Do you feel pressure competing in that environment? Do you feel confident?
Confidence is coming more and more the better that I do. At first, when you're first coming up, you don't you don't have that feel of what it's like to be in there. There's a lot of like unknowns and a lot of guessing, and that produces a lot of anxiety. But the more that I'm in there and the more that I can humanize my opponents to myself and make them into something other than like this monster that I'm going to fight, the better, the more confident that I get. And that's always tricky. Sometimes I'm good at it. Sometimes I can't quite make him into a human before I fight him. So it's a game, it's a process, but yeah, it's getting better and better. I'm finding myself more. I'm finding my confidence and my flow, and every time a little bit more every time I fight.
I mean, those types of promotions, bro, they're built for people that are just like you, young lions that just want to make it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that would create that sort of mosh pit environment where a fighter comes in and sees all these guys backstage and says, "Holy shit, is this who I'm going up against?" I mean, what kind of mental attitude do you have to compete in an environment like that?
It's hard because like I can't really speak to everybody. I've talked to a few different people because mentality is part of the sport that fascinates me because I think it's so important. And it's kind of like an ethereal part to teach. So like you're surrounded by guys and everything that can teach you moves and stuff like that all day, but getting that like mental insight is really tough. And I know that there's a lot of people that do it differently. Like there's a lot of people that like to get aggressive and come in with that kind of attitude. But I go the other way. Like my name said, like I feel better when I treat everybody like it's a game. It's a game. And then I go Zen. I try and like back off from my emotions and just stay calm and easy. Try and make it like an everyday sparring session. I find like the more fun that I can have, the more that I can like kind of like put my soul into it and play around with it, the better that I do. Even before the fight, even like the mental, like, because everybody tries to like get in your head a little bit, either with stare downs or whatever it is. And the more you can, like, the earlier you can start to play and have fun with it, the better for me.
I mean, that is such a genuine way of thinking. I mean, that's what you want a fighter to think like, bro. I mean, if you think that you're just gonna come in there and run through everybody, then you got another thing coming. If you think that you're coming in less confident and you're coming in nervous, bro, that might not be so right for you. You've got to have that humbleness about you and that modesty. How do you feel, bro? If a fighter's too confident and they're coming in, how do you feel about fighters like that, bro? What's your take?
I mean, obviously, there's some fighters like Conor McGregor that do it really well, but in general, I think that that attitude is fragile, and it shows that they're not admitting something to themselves. Everybody has doubts. Everybody has, like, everybody's human. Every one of us that fights is human. So everybody has doubts. Everybody has, like, yeah, nobody's 100% confident. Everybody has doubts and fears and those kind of like little stuff, those little voices inside of them that speak up. And you can ignore that all you want, but ignoring it's not going to help. Like dealing with it and admitting it and then working on it is, for me, the way to go. And so, like, when I'm around young amateurs, a lot of times they have a really hard time admitting that they get scared before they fight, right? And I always tell them, like, dude, it's cool to admit that you're scared. Like, it's fine. Like, tell me you're scared, admit to yourself that you're scared, and then from then we can work on it. But otherwise, it's never going to get better. You're always going to lie to yourself and then lie to other people, and then you're going to go in there scared, because that's just what happens if you're not dealing with those little emotions. So I think that that attitude is a front that's hiding a lot of anxiety and doubt and stuff like that. That's the way that I choose to look at it anyway, so that I don't get scared.
I love that. I love that, bro. I love that attitude, Kev. I mean, another factor in MMA is age. Yeah, but I mean, we've seen so many legends prove how timeless they are. Yeah, but I mean, Randy Couture, and right now Jacare Souza, a lot of guys, even Alexei Olenek in the heavyweight division. There's so many guys, bro, that prove that, yeah, they can go past that sort of out of prime, or they are timeless and ageless. What's your take, bro? I mean, what's your take on a fighter beginning a career to a fighter hanging the gloves up?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be a time to hang the gloves up. And it is like it's kind of like a trope in the fight world that, you know, people don't retire early enough and they end up getting beat up a lot at the end of their careers. What I think is cool is that training is getting smarter and smarter, and now you're seeing people focus much more on like recovery and mobility and massage and all these things that keep them healthy in the long run. I think what happened back in the day was training was so hard and all about the grind that people would break themselves early. So you see people peak really early. And now the reason you're seeing people extend far beyond that is because people are training smarter and smarter, which that I really like, because I'm in my 30s as well. So I do a lot of research and stuff, and I would like to fight for, you know, I don't want to be fighting when I'm in my 40s, but I want to fight for a while. So a lot of this stuff really interests me. But yeah, you know, there's always a time to hang the gloves up, and it's okay to, like, I understand how addicting it is, and how people sort of define themselves through fighting. When you've been doing a thing for so long, like, you know, people don't say I fight, they say I'm a fighter. So it's hard when you self-identify like that to hang it up and quit and do something else. But it's a beautiful thing to be able to spend however long with your life competing in martial arts and doing something that you love, and then hang it up when it's time and do something else.
I mean, people say that even now, which I don't agree with at all. People say that if you're 35 or 36, you should look to hanging them up. I think that's complete bullshit, bro. I think it depends on your body. It depends on how you feel inside as a person. And bro, you're 31 right now, right, bro? I mean,
32.
You're 32. Sorry, man. I mean, you're still so young, bro. I mean, you're a young lion right now in this sport. Yeah, and with only 9 fights under your belt, you're gonna look to produce that longevity that makes a great fighter, and you're getting that opportunity, bro, with the Contender. With your own career, man, how are you feeling? You've mentioned about doing gymnastics and things like that. How do you feel? How do you keep yourself in shape?
Kind of like what I was saying about a big part of it is making sure that I'm doing a lot of speed work. I don't want to slow down. My strength isn't so much of an issue, but obviously as everybody goes older, kind of the first thing that goes is that quick twitch speed. So I do a lot of that, but I feel faster than ever. I don't feel like that's like catching up with me at all. And then luckily for me, I have a style where I don't take a lot of damage and I'm not in a whole lot of wars. So on that side of things, it's all good. And then I just concentrate a lot on recovery, a lot of like rolling out, meditating, mobility,
Nice.
doing all the things on the back end after training that keeps me healthy and functional. So I'm not, I don't pick up knee damage or all those things, stuff like that. Where my body starts breaking down on them. I've been lucky with
that. Definitely, man. I mean, dating back. I mean, let's take you back, man. To your amateur days. You're 1-1. And you made.
I had a bunch of amateur fights. I was like
okay.
10-10. It was about 50-50. It took me a long time to figure out the mental part of the game, but yeah, I had a bunch of amateur fights.
Okay. Shit. I mean, I learned something new every day, man. I mean, to me, bro. I mean, how does it feel, making that transition from amateur to professional? I mean, as an amateur, you're a young kid. You're just coming up. You're learning what you learn, bro. And as a professional, it starts to feel real. It starts to feel like, holy shit, I've made it. How did it feel for you, Kevin, to make that transition, bro?
By the time I made the transition, it felt natural. So there's a couple things that happened. Like in my amateur days, like I said, it was about 50-50 because at first I was losing a lot of fights because I couldn't figure out the mental part of the game. I would have like paralysis by analysis. I'd overthink the fight like crazy and it would stuff me up. And so I started the process of kind of removing that self-conscious part of my mind and just getting lost in martial arts and letting myself do my thing without so much like self-consciousness about the injury that I might pick up or the crowd that's watching me while I'm like half naked and, like putting all that stuff away. And then I started doing much better after I learned how to let it flow. And after I went on a few fight win streak, there was a little time where I thought maybe I was going to do something else with my life. I took about 6 months and I got a job after the like cannabis industry got legal in Colorado. I grew cannabis for like 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, maybe that's something that I want to do. But I got super bored and antsy and it kind of like reinvigorated me where I was like, all right, I don't want to do anything else. This is what I want to do. So I had the certainty that that's what I wanted to do. And then I had gone through enough amateur fights to have figured out myself mentally. So when I took that step, it felt like, it was scary and everything, but I was sure.
And that just shows your passion as a fighter, bro. I mean, I respect that. I admire that, and that's what fans, as fans get more educated right now, man. That's what they look at. There was a lot of criticism on guys like Conor McGregor and Colby Covington for just showing their passion for money, and getting laid and getting paid. You know what I mean? But for you, bro, for fighters like you, and I can name so many others, like Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, guys like that, who make fighting their life.
Yeah. That's what I'm interested in doing, man. Like after I'm done competing, I want to be Mr. Miyagi. I want to be Yoda. I want to be able to like stay in this world and share everything that I've learned and and just coach. Like I really like that part of it too. I've been doing that for a while.
All respect to that, man. We then touch on you, and I know we've touched on it earlier in the conversation, but I want to touch on your fighting style, Kevin. I think when people look at your fights at Legacy and throughout your career, bro, they'll see, oh shit, here comes another Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, but they'll think that you have such an underrated submission game, and 2 wins by rear naked choke, bro. I mean, when I was watching those fights, I was watching the fights back, and it was slick. The transitions looked slick, and of course you have the highlight reel, sweet chin music finish.
Yeah.
How do you feel, bro, being so well-rounded? What's your background? How did it all start for Kevin Wirth?
I started traditional martial arts when I was in first grade. Like the first kind of like movies and everything that I got into was like Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee movies, Ninja Turtles, like everything had to do with like martial arts and being a ninja when I was really young, me and my little brother. And then when I got into first grade, we found a spot that taught martial arts, and then I started wrestling that same year. And then I started doing capoeira in middle school.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a fun one. But yeah, it was just like this slow progression, and I never really lost interest. But like when I was a little kid, I didn't know what the UFC was, or that you could make a living fighting or anything like that. And that wasn't until I was about like 18 and I found Muay Thai after I watched Ong Bak. And then from there, that's kind of what introduced me to the MMA world. And that general progression, like you work mitts for a while and you're like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. And then you start sparring for a while and you're like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe now I want to fight. And that scared the shit out of me. The first couple of fights, I always kind of figured myself as like a tough guy, but when I first fought, I was scared shitless. And so I was like, all right, I'm not a tough guy like this. I'm going to have to keep doing this until I can fucking till I kind of like catch up with that image of myself. I didn't like how much fear and stuff was inside me when I actually went to fight.
I mean, is jiu-jitsu something that you work on, that you improve on during your training camps?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't even answer your question. Yes.
I know, it's fine.
I do a lot of jiu-jitsu. Every week I work with Barrett Yoshida. I used to at the old spot that I trained at, I did a lot of gi jiu-jitsu, and I got up to purple belt, but I think at a certain point, like that doesn't help as much as wrestling and no gi, obviously, because there's just grips and things that are there that aren't there in a real fight. So that's what I mostly do. I mostly do, wrestling, a little bit of jiu-jitsu, ground and pound, but I was decently strong. I've been grappling for about 10 years. But and sorry, when I first started fighting,
go ahead, man.
Okay. Well, when I first started fighting, that was my comfort zone, was grappling. And I wanted to box and I wanted to kickbox and show off that skill set. But every time something would happen, my natural instinct would just be to take him down and start grappling. But I didn't like that. So I forced myself to do more and more stand-up and kind of fight that way. And now that's my comfort zone. And I like it. I'm more athletic, I think, in the stand-up than I am in the grappling. And for me, it's just more fun to fight that way.
I mean, a lot of guys can relate to your childhood inspirations. Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, bro, the Ninja Turtles, things like that. I mean, it just takes me back. It takes a lot of guys back, I think, bro, to the fact that, oh shit, I want to do that too. Because, I mean, you see that, bro. Bruce Lee movies like Enter the Dragon, bro, they're so cool because you think, oh shit, I mean, he's kicking their ass. I mean, we see traditional martial arts, bro. I mean, it's been around for hundreds of years. And I think only certain people understand that things like grappling are not boring at all. Things like patience and striking are not just all about swinging wild and knocking someone the hell up. It's about technique, and I think, what's your take, Kevin? Because it's a really interesting topic, especially during this time where there's so many social media groups on Facebook and stuff. What's your take on that? On what people perceive to be MMA?
I mean, it varies. Like, the less people know about the sport, obviously, the more misguided their view of it is. So I think when you talk to an educated fan, they have a much clearer view of like what you were talking about, like the why underhooks matter. And like you'll see now that the crowd is getting so educated. A lot of times, like you'll see somebody get an underhook on the ground, and the crowd will go, ooh, like the crowd will react. When back in the day, nobody knows why like putting your hand in the other guy's armpit is a good thing. So I think the crowd is getting more and more educated. But there definitely is still that from people that choose not to like it and have a certain kind of view of it. They describe it as, like two dudes putting their head down and swinging at each other and this like macho kind of thing. And filled with angry young men, and that whole kind of typical thing that if you don't stop and actually look at what it is, you can get convinced that that's what it is. But it's definitely not. Like, you walk into a jiu-jitsu class and it's mostly filled with like smart, nerdy kids.
I mean, yeah, go
and then the other thing that I think helps is, instead of describing it as a fight, like if you say I'm a fighter, people have one image of you in your head, of like the tough guy, brutish kind of whatever. But if you tell people that I'm a martial artist, then they get like the Bruce Lee kind of like meditates, and like, you know, like you can, just by the words that you use to describe what you do, you can change people's perspective of it. And both are true. I'm a fighter and I'm a martial artist, so I'll say kind of whatever depending on who I'm talking to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when people think of martial arts, they don't think of double leg takedowns and clinch work. They think of just Bruce Lee and just the traditional kicks and stuff. But there's so much more, and I think that's what we love about mixed martial arts, is the fact that it educates fans, and it brings a new flavor to the tradition.
Yeah, totally. And it forces everybody to mix it up and learn. Like we saw in the beginning, like you can't just have one style now. You have to have multiple styles so that people don't have an easy answer for you. You have to be slick on the ground. You have to have good wrestling and anti-wrestling, and you have to have good striking. But I think that like separation of like martial arts from fighting is like a nonsense separation. Like, they're the same thing. Like, you don't learn everything. If you become a black belt in whatever martial art and you've never fought, there's an aspect to martial arts that you haven't learned. And then same thing, if you fight all the time, but you never get introduced to the mental game or any of that, there's like that mental, spiritual, whatever part of it that you don't delve into. And that part of it is really important because if you can't keep your mental shit together in the middle of a firefight, then it doesn't matter how good you technically are if you're brittle and fragile mentally.
I mean, bro, I mean, that is, like we said earlier, I mean, mentality and mental and your mindset is so real. It's so important. So, Mr. Nice Guy, I want to take you into our segment, a segment I like to call the throwback, where I take you back into a couple of memorable fights that, in my opinion, I've seen of yours, and I just want to get your opinion. I want to take you back first to Legacy 44. It's not I know it's not a real good memory. Of course, it was you versus Richard Palencia. And yeah, you came into this one 5-0. He was 6-0 at the time. So I just want to. I mean, do you remember that fight and what was going through it?
Yeah, for sure. It was a fun fight against a good wrestler, and I learned a lot from the loss in that fight. It was a split decision loss, and it was one of the things where, like, I feel like I was winning the fist fight, and if it would have kept going, I would have won. But he was winning the sport. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I know he had those big flashy, pick me up over his shoulder, he slammed me down a few times. And I remember that those slams were so big, he picked me up, and I had time to think in the air, like, all right, this is a sweet move. This looks good. Bam. But no, it was a fun fight. And like I said, like I learned a lot. I learned because I had a real sideways stance, which I still utilize, but I wouldn't switch it up and move side to side when he'd close distance. And especially on a wrestler that's just going to keep coming forward, you can't just move straight in and out. You have to move side to side. Otherwise, they're going to take you down. And that lesson has been hugely helpful moving forward.
I mean, that is between two. You came into that fight undefeated, and so did he. I mean, like you said, bro. I mean, that whole going up against a good wrestler, of that caliber, it can be tough. But I mean, watching that fight back, you had your moments standing, and he had his with the takedowns, like you said. But to me, bro, I mean, it was close. It was a tough ass fight for you, man. I mean, we move on then, man, to something where I think you'll enjoy this one. You'll enjoy it, man. It's the fight against Isaiah Gutierrez. The sweet chin music finish.
Yeah.
Bro, I mean, with I mean, with this one, but you're as I watched the build up to the knockout, you used your reach and your height so well, man. You were leading with the side kick a lot to the body, and I think your fakes were so good because he couldn't guess where you were going to throw the next kick. What was going through your mindset leading into that finish?
Well, I was losing that fight, like by a little bit, but I knew I was losing. But really, it was weird. I knew I had set it up because I was using my lead leg like that. Like you said earlier, it's kind of that Stephen Boy Wonder Thompson style where you're using your lead leg like a jab, side kicking, flick kicking, and kind of making it come in from all different directions, so they're not sure where it's coming from. And I knew I had got him kind of confused by his reactions to my feints. But when I threw that kick, it was just another kick thrown. I wasn't like, no part of me was like, ooh, this is the knockout kick. I just threw it and he went away, and I was like, holy shit. and jumped on him, and that was it. But yeah, man, like it wasn't it was a thing that like came out of nowhere, even to me.
I mean, that fight for you, man, was it kind of put you on the map at Legacy, because everywhere I look now, that I see that fight.
Dude, me too. And honestly, I'm like, you guys, I have other highlights. I have other cool shit that I've done. I know that's my best one, but like, show something else.
I mean, there's a whole highlight reel dedicated to Kevin, Mr. Nice Guy Wirth, bro. I mean, it's on YouTube. If fans want to go check it out, they can check out what you're all about, man. And having talking to you as well, I can see that putting it together is your speciality, bro. We then move to King of the Cage. We move to Legacy, and we move to Cage Fury. You've been at all three, yeah, bro. And I think we've touched on this early on. And then, of course, all three of those promotions, bro, are so highly scouted by the UFC. We've seen Dana White on Looking for a Fight, scout fighters on all three. How would you compare all three promotions, bro? Would you say there are similarities in smaller promotions like that, or would you say there's differences in the promotions?
Not really between organizations, because they all have to go through state athletic commissions and everything. So the whole, like, everything that you go through, the whole process is always kind of the same up until right before you fight, and then it's the same cage. There's not really much of a difference. I don't feel a difference. There's no difference. I mean, they're all like a little unique, I guess. Like different characters are around each different one, just because different people work for each one. But like, I mean, as far as like the level of the fighters where I'm at now, I've had a little bit of an easier time with the guys I think that I fight in King of the Cage as opposed to the other two. But that could just be because that's how it worked out. But yeah, man, not really. A fight's a fight. The time limit's always the same. The cage is always the same. It's very similar.
I mean, as we move from smaller promotions to bigger promotions like the UFC and Bellator, PFL, and ONE FC, I think you see them similarities between the UFC and Bellator being the biggest promotions. I think what we see different is the format when Bellator used to do the tournaments. But I mean, when you see a promotion like the UFC and Bellator, there's always that the lights and the spectators and the crowd going crazy. Where do you? I mean, obviously, I'm leading to congratulate you being chosen for the Contender Series Season 4. Yeah, well,
what was I? I didn't
yeah.
know.
You're one of the guys. You're one of the favorites to fight on this season.
Favorites. Yes, it's not official yet, but yeah, I did know that. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, no worries, man. I mean, bro, it's a huge opportunity to get something like this and fight on the UFC stage. What is actually going through your mind heading into something like the Contender?
Well, you always got to separate what matters from what doesn't matter. And like I said, like the cage is the same, time limit's the same. My competitor, I can't do anything about who he is. So I'm the same. And nothing else matters. The room I'm in doesn't matter. The type of lights don't matter. The crowd noises don't matter. A lot of like becoming, I think, mentally efficient and being able to focus is the ability to separate what matters and what doesn't matter. So I don't care what the room is. I don't care what the temperature is or what the lights are or who's there or anything like that. It's all the stuff that matters is always the same.
I mean, then we with Bellator, yeah, but I mean, what do you think of Bellator as a promotion, bro? Because in my opinion, there are so many. It's produced a lot of world class guys like Michael Chandler and Eddie Alvarez, but I think a fighter can outgrow an environment like Bellator because it doesn't have enough of that star power, in my opinion, to be competitive. I think if you see the fights, you see guys who aren't really notable. You see mismatches a lot in Bellator. What are your thoughts, Kev, of Bellator as a promotion?
Honestly, man, I'm not going to have a very good answer for this one. I don't know the ins and outs of a lot of promotions. That's not the part of the game that I like to focus on, so I don't know very much about it. I don't even like follow fighters very often. I like specific fights that I can learn things from and movements and like fighting styles and techniques. That stuff I'll study all day. But companies, promotions, how they set things up, that's all my manager's job to get me like the options that he can get. Right. So I just show up to fight. So I don't know. I don't know the difference between Bellator and UFC and one, and I'm sure there are differences, but honestly, I'd be pumped to make a living, like a real living fighting for a while. So if that's Bellator or whatever it is, like sign me up. Besides, yeah. So I don't know.
I mean, in my opinion, as we mentioned with the smaller promotions, bro, it's the reason I was just asking you that view is because with the smaller promotions, you mentioned that the process is it's similar, and it's the same. I mean, as you grow bigger as a fighter, and start to fight for bigger promotions, and I think the UFC is calling your name and will be calling your name soon, bro.
I hope so. That's true.
We see. I mean, for me personally, bro, being an analyst, I see a lot of differences, and I think the UFC will suit a style like yours, bro. I think just because you will capitalize on that opportunity. I think that's the kind of guy you are. And of course, I'm glad you have that view of not knowing the ins and outs because it doesn't create that pressure, or as much pressure. How do you? I mean, I was watching a video of you, bro. I do it reviewing MMA knockouts and UFC knockouts. How, in your opinion, bro, what knockout of all time in the UFC stood out to you, if one?
I don't know if there's one that influenced the sport more than another, but I know one that influenced me. One of the biggest ones was when McGregor knocked out Aldo. I think that showed a kind of a difference. Like there was like a before that happened and after that happened, as far as like techniques and stuff like that. Like he was one of the first people that came in and really did the like sideways karate stance, and you see him kind of fighting in that like traditional side kicks, hook kicks, in and out movement. And you didn't really see that from fighters before he started coming in. There was a few. He was the one that really popularized. Now I think you're seeing an evolution of that, and there's more and more people coming up with that kind of style. And I know I've been influenced a lot by that style. So yeah, for that one.
That was such an iconic fight. Well, because of the build up, and I think Aldo, bro, for me is still the pioneer of the featherweights. But I think what happened to him is he got too emotionally caught up. And that's what McGregor thrives on, bro. It's like food to him.
Yeah, totally. If you like, like that's what I was talking about earlier with the mental part of the game being so important. And McGregor really capitalizes on finding, like, prodding people and finding like, this is where he's sensitive. And then he'll get them super emotional and riled up before they fight, man. And it's like somebody slapping you in the face and like spitting on you and then sitting you down to play chess. You're gonna have a horrible chess game. It's the same kind of thing. You get somebody riled up, they can't focus. They won't have patience. They won't have all these like little things, clarity of vision that you need to fight somebody as good as McGregor.
I mean, right now, that's when I think McGregor was just in his prime, and coming into that game with the mindset of being the best. As we look to fight week this weekend, Kev, is UFC 249, but headlined by two huge championship fights, where Tony Ferguson meets Justin Gaethje for the interim lightweight championship. I know I don't know if you saw our keys to victory video, but I want to just get your key to victory for both guys. But how do you think this one plays out?
Well, the keys to victory, I think, if Justin Gaethje can keep the fight from becoming too chaotic, and he can kind of keep it in that boxing range, then I think he's going to do really good. And then it's the opposite for
Tony.
Yes, for Tony. If he can make the fight chaotic and wild, then I have him winning. Like, that's his kind of style. He does the crazy where he gets hit and rolls like somersaults away from people. Like, that guy thrives in chaos. Or if he can make it chaotic and then stay within that, I think he'll win. If Gaethje can keep it organized and keep the chaos from spreading too much and kind of keep it in that boxing range and keep it more of like a traditional like MMA style fight, then I think he'll end up doing much better. So it's just about who can control the chaos, I think. If there's more, then you'll have one result. If there's less, you'll have Gaethje win. I
mean, both guys, bro, have incredible chins. Yeah. And literally superhuman Tony Ferguson. His training is crazy, bro. And he made a statement by making weight even when the Khabib fight got cancelled. I
remember that.
Bro, it leads up to such a fight which is gonna cap off one of the most stacked cards in UFC history, bro. And then you see Dominic Cruz.
Well, what I like about what I like about both these guys is, like you said, like they're really both good at creating storylines, and story is like what people get engaged by, and that's what they want to see. Like, you can have two good technical fighters, but if there's no story, people have a hard time engaging. But these two guys with with the MAGA hats and then making weight when he didn't even have to, and like how interesting of personalities these guys are just by themselves, putting them together and kind of creating that story that they've created, I think, like you said, like gets people really excited about the fight. It does. It's like their stakes down just money.
Oh, damn right. Then we see Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. Yeah, bro, you got the uncrowned King of Kings of the Bantamweight division against Triple C, what I like to call triple douche. Yeah, bro, because he's not. I mean, bro, his attitude is not attractive to me, but he's one hell of a fighter, bro. And
wait, which one are you talking about? Whose attitude?
For Henry Cejudo.
I hear that a lot about him. Yeah, that makes sense.
How do you feel? How do you see this one playing out, man?
I think Cejudo is going to have a little bit of a harder time with this fight than he did against the other guys going up to 135, because I think Dominic Cruz has good footwork and good backwards movement, and he doesn't mind backing up and picking you apart and cutting angles and stuff like that. Where Cejudo, with the other guys that he was fighting, were both more orthodox but forward moving, kind of like pressure fighters. And he's just such a bulldog that if you try to meet him head to head, he'll blast through you eventually. But Dominic Cruz, I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to move around, pick him apart, dance, and I think that's going to be harder for Cejudo than a lot of his other matchups. One, because of the height difference. That's a hard kind of reach advantage to close if they're dancing around like that. And two, just because it's not really a style. Like Dominic Cruz is such an unorthodox style. You have a really hard time matching with people when you're training for it, like getting training partners that fight like him. So it's going to be a lot of new pattern recognition.
Damn right. I mean, that's straight up, bro. I mean, there's going to be so much going into that fight. Like coming off the Cody Garbrandt loss, Dominic Cruz lost the wrestling exchanges a lot more than the striking exchanges, bro. I mean, and Henry Cejudo's an Olympian wrestler. How do you think that one's going to play out? Because Cruz isn't exactly a slouch on the ground too.
No, he's not, and he has that thing where he's kind of like, he just keeps the same pace the whole fight, keeps dancing, keeps popping you. But I mean, definitely, it would be. Henry Cejudo has the grappling and wrestling advantage. If he can close that distance and hook around his waist and make it more of a grappling wrestling thing, I think then he'll win. More just because that style is so exhausting to keep up with. Like if your body isn't so used to that, like at an Olympic level, that's gonna, when somebody's pulling on your head and taking you down, and it feels like drowning after a while, and your pop goes away in your punches, and it's like sucks your willpower away. And so if you can force the fight in that direction, then I have Cejudo winning for sure.
I mean, bro, there are so many other fights on this one, Kev. I want to get your opinion on a few of them. Just 2-3 more. Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik, bro. As I like to call it, King Kong versus Godzilla. Are you familiar with this one, bro? Because Francis Ngannou, bro. I mean, if you're not, I would love to. You need to just check that out because it is a hell of a fight, bro. They're two big bulls, and I don't know if you've seen Francis Ngannou in a fight. But it's something to expect where, like we mentioned before about slugging and having just that old-fashioned slugfest. That's what fans are expecting from this one, bro. And yeah, go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, I think that style is almost more acceptable in the heavyweight division because it's more like practical. In little. When you're my size, you don't have that like one punch knockout. Really, you have to put combinations together, and it's more about speed. But as you get bigger and bigger, like that one punch knockout is there. So if you can get good at sitting into combinations, kind of putting your head down, and all you need is that one to connect. You see a lot more people go down off that one shot, I think, in the heavier weight divisions than you do it go lighter and lighter. So that makes sense.
That's the thing. Yeah, oh yeah. There's another one where Donald Cowboy Cerrone goes up with Anthony Pettis in their rematch, bro. And I want to get your thoughts on this one because it's. I mean, just to wrap it all off, because there's two modern day OGs, two modern day legends, and in the first fight, Pettis fought beautifully. Great use of his body kicks and then the head kick to cap it off. How do you see this one playing out?
This one's a tough one because they've both had so many different experiences from their last fight. And I think, unfortunately for Pettis, he lost a lot between that fight and this fight. Like lost a lot of fights. Like, I don't know. But the bummer thing that I see from his losses is that he doesn't evolve from his losses. I think one of the most important things when you pick up a loss is to learn and then evolve from why you lost. And he seems to be the same fighter now than he was so long ago, which I don't think is helpful after you pick up so many losses. Like, why change if you're always winning? But he's not. And then I think Cerrone learns a little bit more from his losses, although he did just come off of a really hard one, which I know can mess with some people. But I think Pettis is going to have a harder time this time than he did last time. I don't know who's going to win, but I think it's going to be much more even. And I think Pettis is going to have a hard time.
I think so. I think both guys have their weak points. I think since the last fight with Pettis, we've seen Donald Cerrone have a weakness in when he takes body shots. He's taken hard body shots against Rafael dos Anjos. So really hard body shots when he fought Tony Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and Anthony Pettis his kicks are unbelievable, bro. I mean, just have your sound on for that one.
And then, sure.
And then for Pettis, it's when he gets pressured. And I think with Cerrone's wrestling, that could play that difference. Like we were talking about with Cruz and Cejudo. Do you think it could play down to that factor if it goes down to the later round?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if the fight, if Cerrone can put the pressure on and not leave a wide enough gap in between them too often for those kicks to start to come off and him to be able to set up his fancier kicking game, then it can absolutely come down to who can either keep the pressure or who can keep the distance.
Yeah, I mean that's it. That's it. That's what it's going to play down to at the end of the day, man. And all I have to say now to wrap it all off is thank you, bro. And I wanna thank you for joining us. So it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
I mean, that's what I tried to do, and I love to have you on again to talk because I don't think we're finished.
Oh man, let's do it. I'm up for it anytime.
Definitely, man. It's fight week, bro, and it's a special time to have a conversation like that. And I want to wish you good luck during lockdown and quarantine. And thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
This is great.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Till next time. I'll let you know when I got stuff coming up. Yeah. All right.